Hey there, welcome to the REI Conversion Podcast, where each episode we discuss strategies and digital tools to help you launch, automate, and scale your real estate investing business. Learn how to run your investing business remotely, find out ways to automate your business to better utilize your time, and learn what other successful investors are implementing so you can get to the next step closer to your investing goals. And I'm your host and founder of REI Conversion, Jesse Kwong. Hey, how's it going? It's Jesse here from the REI Conversion Podcast Show. I've got a special guest with me today. His name is Adam. He is going to share his story of coming from a full-time job to doing land full-time and leaving his job and sort of making that transition. I'd love to hear his story and how he made his transition and hopefully give some inspiration to some of you guys listening out there who are planning to make that jump as well. As usual, this podcast is brought to you by REI Conversion. If you are looking for an amazing system to help you centralize your data, to help you automate your land investing business, to streamline your process, make sure you check out REI Pebble over at reiconversion.com. If you're looking to send out mailing, generate documents, manage your team, and managing data, this system is built just for that, to help you streamline and scale your land investing business. Go ahead and head over to your site. Feel free to even book a free demo with me. We'll see if this is even a good fit for yourself, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Other than that, enjoy this episode. Cheers. Hey, how's it going? My name is Jesse here from the REI Conversion Podcast Show. I've got a special guest with me today, Adam. Adam, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well. So Adam got put on to me by one of the fellow land investors in the community. Adam actually has a really cool story of how he sort of got started with land and where he was before land. I'm super interested to hear all about that. But Adam, why don't you just sort of give us a little background on why don't you just share a little bit about how you got started with land?
Sure. So I was a beer sales rep, so I had a big territory, a lot of driving involved. So plenty of time to listen to podcasts. I figured I'd learn some stuff while I was driving. So I was listening to some real estate podcasts, and I knew I kind of wanted to get into it, and I didn't know exactly how. But then I heard a podcast interviewing the land geek, and
Yeah.
he was talking about his returns, 300 to 1,000% returns, and I was just like, that is amazing. How does that happen? But then he said you mail people, and I was like, nope, not going to do that. So, but then I kept listening, so I started listening to his podcast a little bit, and I was just like, this land thing it kept calling me. So so I started with their flight school
Yeah.
course, and just kind of went from there and just did it on the side while I had that other job going.
So I hope you don't mind. I'd love to dig a little bit about that, sort of talk a little bit. What was that sort of, phase like? For a lot of people, that's a pretty big jump, going from, a full-time job to land investing. So first of all, how long ago was this?
So it was just over 2 years ago, so September of 2019.
Wow. And how long did it take for you to take the dive, quit the job, and do this full time?
So I just quit my job in either March or April, I can't remember, of this year.
Congrats. So like about a year and a half type of thing, 18 months?
Yeah, a year and a half.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who ask me, what are the possibilities of that actually happening in the next few years or the next few months? And it's always great to hear somebody who's actually done it. Now, what was your typical day like as a beer salesman? What is that all about? What do you do,
Yes.
and what is that like?
So I got to the warehouse and kind of went through my planning for the day at 7 a.m. Then drove for about an hour, hour and a half. That's where I listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
And then did all my accounts, and then drove back around 3, and then was done at 5. So that's kind of the day of the beer salesman. So when I started doing the land thing, I got up at 4:30 every day and worked from 4:30 to 6:30 on the business, and that's how I got going.
Wow. So this was now hold on. You said you started your day at 7, right? And you
Yes.
wrapped up at 3 or 5.
Like 5 is when I got home.
So it's a lengthy day. You
Yeah.
still tacked on 2 more hours prior that to run your business. Now, did you do that consistently? every day type of thing, or was it every other day, or?
Yeah, nope. I did it every single day, including the weekends, until I probably I started getting up at 5 just recently. So I mean, I cut that half hour off. But yeah, I like that early morning time because I didn't have other time really. And
Yeah,
then I also just had a daughter. Previous to that, she was like 6 months old when I started this, so I
yeah.
wanted to be there for my family. So I got up before anybody was up, and that's my quiet focus time.
Hey, I know exactly where you're coming from. That is exactly what goes on here. Get up early, then you still have your evening
Yes,
with your family, which is, I can sacrifice sleep, but I can't sacrifice the time that I have with my kids. So I
exactly.
know where you're coming from. So you're doing you're working sort of your day job, and you're listening to it. What was the first thing you did? How did you sort of get started from there?
So yeah, that's why I did the flight school through the Land Geeks is because it was every week for I think 10 weeks,
Yeah.
and every week you had some homework to do
Hmm.
that you had to have prepared by the next class. So like you did your county research, you picked a county on week one or whatever, and then you mailed, and they literally forced you to mail on the spot. And without doing that,
Yeah.
I might have got stuck in analysis paralysis, and just never got that step done because I imagine that would be the one holdup for most people is like, I don't want to waste $1,000 of mailing or whatever it is, like if it doesn't work. So that having to go through that with them, kind of, leading the way and forcing me to do certain things like
Yeah.
that, get out of your comfort zone, new things. That was the real impetus to like getting this going.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were doing this 2 hours every day. You were going through flight school, and shout out to the folks over at Land Geek. And then, so you're essentially in that program. You're completing a deal or two. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I started the flight school in September, and my first deal was the late November of that same year, so a couple months.
Okay, got you. So once you sort of rolled into November, winter time, you're now sort of doing this on your own, and you stuck to your schedule 2 hours every day. What else did you sort of have to start thinking about once you sort of done the coaching? Were there any sort of changes in your process, or was it just consistently doing the same thing? What was that next step for you?
So the next step was getting some VA help because with
Mm,
a full time job and a family and stuff, I can't be on Messenger the whole time
yeah,
answering questions and
yeah,
like the intake manager. So yeah, I think I hired out intake manager and I got a Facebook posting and answering VA. That was like my first two outsourcing. So that definitely allowed me to free up some time to think more overhead up view on the business and allow me not to like be deep in the weeds of the business. So
yeah.
yeah,
And
getting
they
the
say,
VL
I mean,
help is essential.
yeah, no, and that's what they say when you're looking to scale. There's two things you have to leverage, which is software and people. I mean, you can't replace people, at least not yet. But and that was, I guess, a pivotal thing for you to do is sort of get somebody to. You recognize, I guess, where the bottlenecks were easily, which is
Right.
the intake side of things. You knew you couldn't take those calls or answer those messages. So while they were working on that, sorry, and you mentioned, what were you focusing on? As soon as you started passing that on, were you sort of focusing on? I'm sure it was a bit of a blur, but was there anything that stood out for you? Like, okay, now you know how to do a land deal or two. You're getting some VAs on board. What was sort of that next step for yourself?
Well, for me, then I started looking at different like automations, like like a CRM and like different software technologies that would help
Yep,
me stay organized and link all the VAs together, kind of into one central location, so it was easier. So like Airtable and Zapier and
yep,
uh, just all those basically. So yeah, I was focused on learning more of that because the first couple. I mean, you could do this on um,
pen and
Microsoft
paper.
Excel.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was literally, and the first I was like putting reminders in my calendar to follow up with this person 3 days
sure.
later, and like that got really annoying. But yes, so the CRM definitely helped with that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I was just learning. You learn kind of as you go in this business because you can do those deals. It just makes it a lot harder. And then once you scale and get a little more deal flow, then you switch to getting the CRM and all that, and you learn how to do it, because I didn't know of any of this.
Yeah,
So it was just kind of learning all that and learning how to use it to the best that it can, like the best it can do to help me, basically.
for sure. Now, there's a lot of people who are probably listening on this right now, and they're thinking, okay, hey, I want to transition. Eventually, I want to transition. I mean, far in depth did you go to planning, or was this sort of on the whim type of thing? You're just gonna figure out on the go and figure out how to transition. Was that part of your goal from the get go?
To leave the job
Get
and do
out
this
of
full
your
time.
day job. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my goal. I didn't plan on doing it as fast as I did. I was kind of forced with a scenario I didn't like, so I had the opportunity to be able to say no, thank you, and don't really need to do that anymore. But
Yeah.
it was always on my radar. I was planning on getting to a certain amount,
Yeah.
um, which that number kept, like, I kept pushing the field,
Yeah.
kept pushing the field goal further, but just because I didn't feel comfortable, and that's just how I'm wired. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah, so once I felt comfortable and I had replaced my income basically, then I was comfortable doing it. I wanted to stick on with the job and just build that further, but I was forced in that scenario, and it was what it is. So I did this full time, and
Yeah.
it's great. So I'm a stay-at-home dad now. I just got
That's
back from the
awesome.
pumpkin patch. It was great.
Full time stay at home dad, part time land investor.
That's kind of how it is now.
That's awesome, man. That's the dream right there. Um,
Exactly.
so tell me, like, if somebody came up to you, right, Adam, and they said, "Hey, can you give me some tips on getting out of my full time job? I want to be able to, do land investing full time. I want to leave my day job." What would you typically tell them?
Like a brand new person that's not even in land investing, or
Let's
somebody
just
that's
say they've
already in
gotten
it.
started, or looking to get started in land at least.
Well, if you're looking to get started, find somebody who's done it before, and I would definitely do some sort of a course or get some sort of help to go. I mean, you can do it. It would just be very difficult to get started on your own for sure.
But
Um,
more on that transition side, like, hey, what do I need to do specifically? Like, perhaps they've done some deals, they can do both, but they don't know how to get out of their job. What would you sort of suggest to them? Would it be wait until they are able to replace their income, or how did you feel? When did you feel ready to sort of leave your job?
yeah, so I would definitely break down the numbers, very detailed, see what your expenses are, and once your profits of the business, because your monthly income are not your profits.
Right,
That's one thing you gotta. That's one thing you realize. Like, yeah, I got 10,000 a month coming in. That's great, but if you're spending 10,000 a month, you're not making any money.
right,
So you got to make sure the profits are more than enough to cover your bills, and that includes the mailings, the buying of the land, which helps getting outside investors to do that to offset the capital intensity buying the land.
right.
So I would tell them, definitely break down your numbers, look at your expenses, look at your profits, make sure you are all set to make that jump. Because if you make it prematurely,
There's
you're
no
going to be
going
very stressed out.
Did you at any point in time have any doubts about when you made that jump, or did you want to sort of turn it back around?
Oh, pretty much every other day of my life.
Oh,
No, I don't regret it at all. But it's definitely, I think, like, man, this would be a lot easier if I had like all my bills covered and I could just dump all that money back into the business again. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's still growing. We're still scaling, and there's only good things to come. So I don't
I'd
regret it.
imagine you'd probably have a good network or a family to sort of support you on that as well. I mean, how important was that?
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, my wife totally jumped on board. She's all for it. So, um, and yeah, I mean, I've got friends in the community, and that's one big thing about this is, like, it's a very lonely business unless you know people doing it, because nobody else has a clue what I'm talking about when I try to explain it. It's it's a little rough to try to explain
Being
to
an
friends, but
entrepreneur is a lonely route to take. So I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
so it's yeah. So I've got a couple people that I talk to pretty much daily about the land business, just
Yeah,
to bounce ideas off of and stay sane myself. Like,
yeah,
is this actually? Because you have your doubts sometimes, but
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
they're very helpful.
Was there sort of any surprises or unexpectedness when you sort of are doing this full time compared to when you were doing it part time? Anything that sort of took you by surprise?
Um, the one thing that did was that I was working more at it when I was doing it part time than when I quit my job, which is, I
So what
mean,
do you think
it's
that's
kind
all about? Why so?
yeah. So, yeah, it's more like I don't have as much to do, I guess, daily. I mean, there's always something to do, but it just doesn't seem like I've got to the point where I have a lot more VAs doing certain things that I did.
Yeah.
So I don't have those tasks anymore. And then just like being a stay-at-home dad, that is really time consuming. You don't have enough, you can't just jump on random calls and like, you
Right.
know, when I had my job, I could jump on a phone call in between accounts and stuff and like, do that. But, now it's a little harder to do that.
I wonder if it comes to the fact that now that you have other obligations, you're sort of forced into a window and really to structure your time correctly and uh, you know use your time wisely, right? You're gonna have to plan out those calls when got a couple free minutes away from the kid or whatever it is. I wonder if that has a play in things, but
Yeah.
that's
You
super
definitely have to
interesting. Yeah.
structure it to like batch everything at like certain times when you know you're going to be there. So,
Right, right. So kind of reflecting back on the past when you were sort of doing it then, was there anything that you sort of missed? I mean, it's odd at being an entrepreneur myself. Like there are certain things that I miss from a day job, and I'm not to say like, oh, don't ever leave your day job, but there are certain things that I miss. I miss Fridays. Now I give myself a Friday, but I miss Fridays. I miss mingling at the office. Like you said, it's quite lonely. You know, is there anything that you sort of miss?
well, the steady paycheck is, being able to
Absolutely.
rely on that is definitely, as much as you want to get out of your job, that steady paycheck that keeps you there is very nice. But, once you can swing it, definitely don't let that keep you.
Yeah.
But, the socialization aspect, and I'm not saying I loved everybody at my job, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
just being out and as a beer sales rep, I was talking to a lot of people and all day long. So now I'm talking to a 2-year-old and not the same conversations. So definitely missed that a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
other than that, not much.
Yeah, it's really interesting when we sort of come to working for ourselves. I mean, I think we're always sold this image that it's all great and it's all rainbows and whatnot. But I'm sure this is the case with you. There are different challenges and certain things. There's certain things you have to trade off. And one of the big ones that you mentioned that just rings a lot for me is the loneliness. So I totally know where you're coming from with that one.
The other, yeah, the other thing too is you can't shut your brain off. So whereas a job you can leave,
That's
I'm literally thinking
probably the
about this.
biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is a 24/7, and I can't leave my phone in the car. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can, but
And I think there are ways to sort of cope with these things. I think there has to be a way to sort of shut these things off, or it does become somewhat toxic. I haven't really announced this yet. We're actually about to launch my other podcast show this week. It's called I'm Horrible at Business. So by the time you guys are all listening to this, I do run another podcast show called I'm Horrible at Business. And it is one of those things that, finding time for yourself and learning to shut off is very, very difficult. And especially when you're first in it and you're gaining a lot of momentum and work doesn't feel like work. It just, you're riding that. So, yeah, hopefully, Adam, you find a way to figure out how to shut that off because it can become a little bit invasive sometimes.
yeah,
So,
yeah, I definitely stopped taking calls late in the evenings, and
yes,
that's
yeah,
family time, and I definitely shut that down because
yeah, yeah,
no sale is worth, putting, telling
totally.
your wife and your kid you can't hang out with them. So,
So let me ask you this: on the technical side with land, if you had a checklist, if somebody were to say, "Hey, Adam, can you give me a checklist of things I need to have before I make that jump to kind of leave my full time job, leave my steady paycheck?" What would those things be in terms of a land investing business?
so
Now, I know
like from
I'm
the
kind of
technical
putting you on the
side,
spot, so whatever you sort of comes to mind here, I don't expect you to know an exact checklist, but what are some of those key things you would say?
yeah. So I mean, as far as the technical stuff, I would definitely recommend you have a CRM. I use Follow Up Boss. I would definitely recommend Airtable to keep all your stuff centralized so you're organized.
Yeah.
Um, Geek Pay is amazing because it automatically takes the notes and stuff, and that's, I mean, if you had to deal with that all the time, that would probably be, yeah. And then Pebble for mailing is amazing. That makes it super easy. And
Yeah.
I haven't even started using all the stuff in Pebble, but I keep
Well,
saying it's on my to-do list, like dig into these certain things, and I just haven't done it yet.
I
But
appreciate the plug, but anyways, no. Well, other than software here, what else would you say? How many deals would you say is a good number of deals to say, hey, yeah, you can start looking at that? Would you say it's like a couple deals, a handful of deals? Like, what do you think?
I mean, that kind of just depends. I would definitely make sure you have steady deals coming in. It's not a certain number. You could be dealing with $40,000 properties instead of $2,000. So if you're doing big volume and lower costs, you definitely want to have a lot more.
Yeah.
Like I literally just hit my 100th sale like last week. So
Wow, crazy!
yeah,
Congrats on that. Holy
yeah, thanks.
smokes!
So yeah, and it's all lower end, cheaper stuff. But I just started mailing some more expensive stuff to try to, do more of those deals. But I mean, it's every scenario is a little different, so it's just
Sure.
kind of what you're comfortable with.
Um, I gotta ask you this. I mean, do you typically do properties on terms, or do you do a cash flip? Now, if I were to guess, when you're leaving a paycheck, you doing things more on terms, so you have sort of a steady income source, or is that typically what you do?
Yeah, so I've actually only done two cash deals in my whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So
So you have a nice, healthy portfolio of
yeah, so
properties
my
on
note
terms.
my note portfolio, and that's how I've always like focused on it,
Yeah.
because I wasn't so concerned about the cash up front. I just wanted those notes to be able to replace my income, and that was always the goal. So that's what I focused on.
Yeah, and I think that I mean that says a lot too. With properties, with notes. I mean, you have a lot more predictability in your income flow. It gets you thinking more, rather than the volatile injection of cash suddenly. You sort of start thinking in a more steady fashion. You scale 'em up more steadily than, getting suddenly you got a huge cash
Right.
injection here and then there and here and there type of thing. So I mean, would you say that's probably something that somebody should think about before sort of leaving their
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely try to have a good portfolio of notes and not rely on those cash deals, because like, what if there's a drought or a COVID or a recession?
Yeah,
Like,
right,
and
right.
people just don't have cash.
Yeah, and it
So
gives you a little
yeah, I
bit
would
of a
definitely try to
buffer.
have that built up.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Adam, I really appreciate your time sharing your story, coming from your work from a beer salesman all the way to now a full-time father and a part-time land investor. Really, probably the other way around. But
Yeah.
is there anything else that you can sort of let other people know in regards to sort of scaling and more so of like leaving their job or coming to doing this full time? Any sort of last thoughts here that I didn't sort of cover?
Yeah, we touched on leaving too early, but don't leave too late either. Don't hold on to your job because you need one more year or five more deals or something. Like, as a lot of people have realized recently, life is not guaranteed. So if you want to spend more time with your family, go spend more time with your family. Get it done. Obviously, don't go broke doing it, but once you feel like you're in a good position to do it, just don't be too scared to take the leap. Like, reach out to me, reach out to somebody who's done it, and if get just ask and say where you're at, and
Yeah.
hopefully somebody can guide you.
I think that's really nice of you, Adam. And if you don't mind, I'll include your name and maybe your email if you don't mind, so people can get in touch
Yeah,
with you. But we'll put that in the show notes. But I think it's one of those things. Again, as an entrepreneur, not a lot of people understand that concept of you leaving leaving your job. So you really don't have a lot of people to bounce thoughts or talks with. Feel free to reach out to Adam. Feel free to reach out to me if you're somebody who is struggling with that. I am a huge advocate for good mental health when it comes to entrepreneurship, and it's tough. I mean, doing business on your own, as a lot of you have already started, you can see there's a lot of sort of ups and downs in doing your own thing. So Adam, thank you very much for again making yourself available for this interview, for sharing your story, and hopefully getting other people to take action, to start thinking in that sense, hey, when am I ready to take that jump as well? So I want to
yes.
thank you for that, and congratulations on your 100th deal. I'm sure you're going to be doing a lot more. By the time this airs, hopefully you've done a lot more. But actually, we're going to be airing this soon. So, Adam, thank
Well,
you once
hopefully.
again for coming on this show.
All right. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Cheers. Before you stop this podcast or head to the next episode, I want to personally thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Conversion Podcast. If you found this helpful, we'd greatly appreciate an awesome review and rating on whichever platform you're listening to this on. And if you have 2 minutes and wanted to step it up even more and help others, feel free to share this in other Facebook groups or pages or any communities, giving others a heads up of the REI Conversion Podcast or this specific episode that may help them on their investing journey. Once again, thanks very much for listening, and catch you on our next episode.